A terminally ill millionaire disguises herself as a homeless woman, only to uncover shocking secrets about her past and the children she never knew existed. Willow Bennett seemed to have it all. The world knew her as a brilliant tech entrepreneur whose empire crossed borders and collected awards. But those who looked closer saw something entirely different. A woman alone in a massive glass apartment, surrounded by everything money could buy, except warmth and connection. Willow's days were filled with endless meetings, million-dollar decisions, and smiles that never reached her eyes. Her routine was relentless, almost robotic. She woke up early, reviewed reports, and spent hours ensuring nothing slipped through the cracks. The silence of her home was broken only by the echo of her own footsteps and the clink of crystal glasses she used to toast herself at the end of every day. Her name was synonymous with power, but no one knew the weight of emptiness that followed her night after night. Then came the diagnosis. Like a knife to the heart, the news hit her hard. A degenerative disease, rare and unforgiving, gave her life an expiration date. A few months, maybe a year, if she was lucky. Doctors spoke of experimental treatments, but Willow wasn't listening. While they listed options, her mind wandered to an unsettling question. What had she really achieved beyond numbers and status? Her past felt heavier than ever, filled with lies she told herself about how grand her life was. Willow began revisiting buried memories, like a detective piecing together a crime scene. Every professional success glittered like fool's gold, masking emotional failures she had refused to see. Friends had drifted away, loves had died, and even her family, complicated as it was, had faded like dust in the wind. Loneliness was her only loyal companion, and the truth was more bitter than any medicine the doctors could prescribe. Time suddenly took on a new meaning. It was no longer a number on a spreadsheet or an opportunity to make more profit. Now, each day was a cruel reminder that her fortune couldn't buy the one thing she lacked: a future. Staring into the mirror, Willow barely recognized the woman looking back. The question haunting her was simple but piercing. What was the point of it all? She tried to find answers in old journals and childhood photos, but they felt distant, as if they belonged to someone else. Her parents were shadows in her memory, and what should have been a refuge of happy recollections was instead a collection of incomplete stories. The past felt like a puzzle, but too many pieces were missing to complete it. Yet Willow couldn't stop trying. One night, staring out the window of her luxurious apartment, Willow had a realization that hit her like lightning. She had become a prisoner of her own wealth. Money, which was supposed to be a tool, had turned into a cage. As she gazed at the city lights, an idea began to form, a spark that could ignite an entirely new path. That spark was small, almost imperceptible, but enough to illuminate something within her. Willow knew she needed to do something radical, something beyond just signing checks for charity or founding another organization with her name on it. This wasn't about philanthropy. She wanted something real, something that would reconnect her with the humanity she had lost. The following days were filled with quiet reflection, but also a growing restlessness. Willow began to wonder if there was someone or something out there that could help her fill the void. Maybe, she thought, the world had more to offer than deals and transactions. Maybe the purpose she sought was hidden in places she had never dared to explore. Willow was about to learn that to find something true, sometimes you have to leave everything behind. And that's exactly what she did. Willow had never considered the world beyond her towers of glass and steel. Until that night. The sound of the wind howling through her window seemed to mock her, whispering, "What's the point of all this money if you don't know what to do with it?" It was unsettling but undeniable. And there, in the uncomfortable silence of her lavish living room, the idea began to take shape. Leave it all behind. Step into a world where life was raw and unfiltered. Find something real, something money couldn't buy. The next morning, she started planning. Willow handed over control of her wealth to her most trusted lawyers. Her accounts, properties, and investments were now their responsibility. For the first time in her life, she relinquished control. She didn't want anyone to know her intentions. This is my journey, she thought. And the most important part? No one could recognize her. With determination she hadn't felt in years, Willow began to shed her old identity, swapping tailored suits for secondhand clothes that looked like they'd been forgotten in a thrift shop. The moment she stepped out onto the streets, the reality hit her like a slap. The cold bit harder than she imagined, and people averted their eyes as if her presence was offensive. She was no longer Willow Bennett, the millionaire, but an anonymous figure trying to blend into a world she barely understood. It was terrifying, but there was also a strange liberation in the anonymity. For the first time, she wasn't playing a role, she was simply surviving. As she wandered, Willow started to observe people with a level of focus she'd never practiced before. It was almost like field research, but with infinitely higher stakes. She saw a man sharing a piece of bread with a stray dog, and a child offering a blanket to a stranger. These small acts of kindness moved her more than any award or business deal she'd ever secured. Slowly, she began to believe that perhaps true goodness still existed, hidden in the very places she'd never thought to look. Every corner she turned revealed a new facet of the life she'd chosen. The stares of judgment, the harsh words of passers-by, and the icy wind cutting through her clothes made it clear. This wasn't a temporary discomfort. This was survival. But even in the face of hunger and exhaustion, Willow held on to the belief that her choice was meaningful. If she could find even one spark of genuine humanity, it would all be worth it. Days turned into weeks, and the weight of her decision began to settle. What am I really looking for? She wondered as she braced herself against another freezing night. Despite the doubts creeping in, there was something undeniable pulling her forward. For the first time in years, Willow was truly alive, feeling cold, hunger, fear, but also a flicker of hope. It was a paradox she never expected to experience. Amid the hardships, there were moments of surprising clarity. Willow saw the simplicity in human interactions. A smile, a kind word, or a shared meal carried far more weight than she had ever realized. These fleeting exchanges made her question everything she thought she knew about success and fulfillment. If the streets could teach her this much, what else might they reveal? One afternoon, while watching a group of teenagers share food in a park, Willow felt something shift inside her. It wasn't just admiration, it was an inexplicable sense that she was drawing closer to something significant. Something that could change the entire course of her journey. She didn't know what it was, but she was ready to find out. The absence of Willow didn't go unnoticed. Her closest friends and confidants grew alarmed as she vanished from the polished world she once ruled. Calls went unanswered, messages ignored, and her once busy office stood eerily silent. When they finally tracked her down, the revelation of her decisions sent shockwaves through her circle. "You've lost your mind," one of them exclaimed upon learning that Willow had abandoned her life of luxury to live on the streets. The idea seemed ludicrous, even dangerous. Among the most vocal was Dr. Harper, her longtime physician who had been with her through every stage of her diagnosis. "Willow, you have access to the best treatments in the world. You could extend your life, maybe even reverse some of the damage. Why throw away that chance?" he pleaded, his voice full of urgency. But to Willow, his words felt hollow. What was the point of prolonging a life that felt so empty? Their conversation ended with her calmly thanking him and walking away without a second glance. The criticisms didn't stop there. A former business partner, someone she once considered a close confidant, tried to dissuade her as well. "This is escapism, plain and simple," he argued. "Do you think you'll find redemption out there? The streets are dangerous, and you're not strong enough for this." His words, though harsh, only strengthened her resolve. Willow had spent her entire life living by the rules of others. This time, it was different. This was her choice. No one seemed to understand. To her friends and advisors, her journey was nothing but reckless desperation. But to Willow, it was the opposite. It was a deliberate search for meaning, a refusal to spend her remaining days in sterile hospitals or empty boardrooms. The more they protested, the more certain she became that she was on the right path. Their resistance only fueled her conviction. Even in her moments of doubt, Willow would replay their words in her mind. What if they're right? She wondered on sleepless nights. But the alternative, a return to the hollow existence she once led, was even more unbearable. She couldn't go back to a life dictated by others' expectations, a life measured in profits and accomplishments that no longer mattered. The isolation of her decision weighed heavily on her. She was completely alone, with no one to share the burden of her thoughts. But deep down, she recognized this solitude as part of the process. The criticism, the rejection, it was all a test of her determination. They don't understand, she told herself. And that's okay. They don't have to. The thought of returning to her old life lingered like a shadow, tempting her with promises of comfort and safety. But the very idea of sitting in her opulent apartment, sipping wine while her days ticked away, felt like a slow death. She had chosen this path for a reason, and she wasn't about to abandon it now. Willow wasn't naive. She knew the world she had entered wasn't a fairy tale filled with happy endings. But something within her, a strength she didn't fully understand, pushed her forward. Whether it was stubbornness or courage, she wasn't sure. All she knew was that staying in her gilded cage would have been the greater risk. So, one last time, Willow reviewed her plans. She packed a small bag, just the essentials, identification, a few mementos, and a modest amount of cash. With a final glance at the home she had built but never truly lived in, she stepped out the door. For the first time in years, she felt a flicker of freedom. What awaited her on the other side of this decision was uncertain, but she was ready to face it. Willow always thought mentors were wise, almost heroic figures with answers to life's biggest questions. But out on the streets, she found no such person. Instead, her mentor was the raw, unvarnished reality of the world she had entered. Each encounter, each fleeting moment, became a lesson. The streets were unforgiving, but they offered clarity that no boardroom or seminar had ever given her. Survival itself became her teacher, and every passing face carried an unspoken story. Her first lesson came on a freezing night when she watched a woman tear her last piece of bread in half to share with a stranger. No words were exchanged, just the quiet act of extending her hand. It struck Willow in a way she couldn't quite articulate. For years, her life had been measured in contracts and profits, but here was something priceless, genuine humanity. That simple gesture planted a seed in Willow's mind. Perhaps kindness wasn't as rare as she had thought. Willow noticed an unshakable resilience among the people around her. Some smiled through their struggles, others offered help despite having so little. It was a stark contrast to the excess she had been surrounded by for years. To her, life was always about more money, more power, more control. Yet these people, stripped of everything, had discovered how to endure, and even to share the little they had. It was a perspective she couldn't ignore. The nights were long and often terrifying, yet they became her moments of reflection. She thought about her life before this journey, about the ways she had isolated herself. Her wealth, which once symbolized freedom, now seemed like chains that had kept her from understanding what truly mattered. In the silence of those dark hours, she began to see the outlines of a purpose she had been too blind to recognize. One of the most unforgettable lessons came from a child who approached her one chilly morning. He offered her a tattered blanket with no hesitation, no expectation. "You remind me of my mom," he said simply, before disappearing into the crowd. The words lingered in her mind, tugging at memories she had long buried. Who was she really? And what had she left behind in her relentless pursuit of success? But not all lessons were gentle. Willow faced the brutality of the streets, judgmental stares, harsh words, and physical threats. She learned to stay vigilant, to sense danger before it struck. Yet, with every challenge, she discovered a strength she hadn't known she possessed. The corporate world had made her tough, but this new environment demanded resilience on an entirely different level. As days turned to weeks, Willow began to see people not as problems to solve, but as lives to understand. She struck up conversations, listened to stories, and found herself moved by the sheer depth of the human spirit. In her old world, vulnerability was a weakness. Here, it was the thread that connected people. And in that connection, she began to find pieces of herself. One warm afternoon, she witnessed a group of strangers sharing food and laughter. They had almost nothing, yet they exuded a joy she had never known. It made her question everything she had ever believed about fulfillment. Could it be that wealth and possessions were distractions from what really mattered? The thought unsettled her, but it also ignited a sense of clarity. Every day brought a new insight, a new revelation. Willow realized that her search for goodness wasn't just about finding it in others, it was about rediscovering it within herself. The streets were stripping away the layers of pride and fear she had built up over the years, exposing her to the raw, unfiltered version of who she was. Then came the day she met Noah. It was sudden, unexpected, and utterly life-changing. What he revealed would shake Willow's world to its very core. Noah came into Willow's life like a whirlwind on an otherwise bleak evening. She was sitting on the cold pavement, trying to stay invisible as the night deepened. A group of young men approached her, their intentions far from kind. Fear gripped her as they closed in, their mocking voices cutting through the air. Before she could think of what to do, Noah appeared. Thin, scrappy, and fierce, he stood between her and the group, driving them away with sheer determination. "You okay, Mom?" he asked, his tone casual yet filled with concern. Willow froze. The word felt foreign, almost absurd. "I'm not your mother," she replied, her voice shaky but firm. Noah just shrugged with a smirk. "Everyone out here needs a mom." There was something about him, a mix of vulnerability and defiance, that disarmed her completely. Without much thought, she found herself following him, as if some unseen force had connected them. Noah was unlike anyone Willow had met. He moved through the streets with a confidence born of necessity, navigating alleys and back corners like they were second nature. He showed her where to find safe places to sleep, how to avoid trouble, and even how to barter for food. "You get used to the cold," he said one night, handing her a threadbare blanket. "But the hunger, that's the tough part?" His words lingered, highlighting a resilience that Willow couldn't help but admire. Their relationship grew in unexpected ways. Noah began calling her mom regularly, much to her annoyance. "I'm not your mother," she would insist, only for him to grin and respond, "Sure, but you're the closest thing I've got." At first, it felt like a strange joke, but as time passed, it began to mean something more. His presence brought a strange comfort, even as he challenged her to confront parts of herself she had long buried. Noah wasn't just a guide, he was a mirror. Through his stories and the way he carried himself, Willow began to see the raw truth of survival. He told her about losing his family, about scraping by on the streets, and about how he'd learned to trust no one. Yet, despite everything, there was an undeniable kindness in him, a willingness to help those who had even less than he did. It was a quality that both humbled and inspired her. One night, as they shared a meager meal by a dying fire, Noah let down his guard. "I've made mistakes, you know," he said, staring into the flames. "But I'm still here. That's gotta count for something, right?" Willow didn't respond immediately, the weight of his words settling in her chest. It was the first time she realized how much she had been learning from him, not just about survival, but about the strength it took to keep going. As they spent more time together, Willow began to understand the gravity of her own transformation. She was no longer just observing life on the streets, she was living it. Noah's guidance was helping her navigate this world, but it was also awakening something deeper, a sense of purpose she hadn't felt in years. With each passing day, she grew more connected to the humanity she had spent so long trying to avoid. But Noah was not without his own burdens. There was a shadow in his eyes, a weight he carried silently. Willow didn't press him, though she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to his story. One night, as they settled into another makeshift shelter, he looked at her and said, "You remind me of someone." His voice was quiet, almost hesitant. "Who?" she asked, her curiosity piqued. He didn't answer, leaving the question hanging in the air. Willow felt herself drawn to Noah in a way she couldn't explain. He wasn't just a companion or a protector, he was a catalyst. Through him, she was beginning to rediscover parts of herself she had forgotten. But the bond they were forming was about to be tested in ways neither of them could have imagined. And when Noah finally revealed the truth, everything changed. The streets had always been unkind to Willow, but now, with Noah at her side, she felt a flicker of strength amidst the chaos. However, the challenges didn't relent. Each day brought new tests, pushing her to her limits. Hunger gnawed at her stomach, cold winds burned her skin, and the sharp, judgmental eyes of strangers were constant reminders of her new reality. But there were greater battles to face: the fragility of her own health and the shadows of her past. Noah was her greatest ally, a guide through the harsh landscape of survival. He knew every alley, every safe corner, and every unspoken rule of life on the streets. But there was something else, something deeper. His resilience was infectious, and his compassion shone through in unexpected moments. He shared his meager meals with her, taught her how to stay safe, and even made her laugh with his dry humor. Despite the pain he carried, Noah had a strength that Willow couldn't help but admire. But not everyone was as kind as Noah. Willow encountered hostility and danger at every turn. One night, as they searched for shelter, a man approached them, demanding money she didn't have. The tension escalated quickly, and Noah once again stepped in, his protective instincts taking over. Though they escaped unharmed, the encounter left Willow shaken, a stark reminder of how vulnerable she was in this new world. Her physical health was also deteriorating. The symptoms of her illness, which she tried so hard to ignore, began to surface more frequently. Noah noticed. "You're not okay," he said one night, his voice tinged with worry. Willow brushed him off, unwilling to acknowledge the toll her condition was taking. But deep down, she knew that every step she took was harder than the last. She was in a race against time, and the finish line felt impossibly far. Amidst the danger and uncertainty, there were moments of unexpected kindness that rekindled Willow's hope. A woman with a weathered face and a warm smile handed them a bowl of soup one evening. "It's not much, but it's what I can give," she said. That small gesture, so simple yet profound, reminded Willow that humanity could still thrive even in the bleakest conditions. It was these moments that kept her moving forward. As Willow grew closer to Noah, she began to see him not just as a protector, but as someone she wanted to protect in return. The weight of his stories, of loss, of struggle, burdened her heart. He was more than just a boy on the streets. He was a survivor, a fighter. And yet, Willow couldn't shake the feeling that he was holding something back. There was a layer of pain he hadn't yet shared, a truth he wasn't ready to reveal. Each day brought new trials, but also new revelations. Willow was beginning to see herself in a different light, not as the cold, calculating businesswoman she had once been, but as someone capable of compassion and connection. Noah's unwavering belief in her, even when she doubted herself, was a mirror reflecting a version of herself she hadn't known existed. But the greatest test of all came not from the outside world, but from within. Willow's health continued to decline, a reminder that her time was limited. Yet, instead of surrendering to despair, she found strength in her bond with Noah. He was a constant source of hope, a reason to keep fighting. She wanted to live, not for herself, but for the possibility of a future with meaning. Then, one fateful evening, Noah finally revealed the secret he had been carrying. His voice trembled as he said, "You're not just my mom in spirit. You're my mom by blood." The words hit Willow like a storm, shattering and rebuilding her world all at once. Willow felt the ground shift beneath her as Noah's words echoed in her mind. "You're my mom by blood. How could that be true?" Her hands trembled as she tried to process what he had just said. Her mind raced back to a version of herself she had buried long ago, one she had chosen to forget. A young woman, overwhelmed and scared, who made choices she now regretted. But this was something she had never imagined. Noah began to tell his story, each word unraveling a mystery she hadn't known existed. He spoke about his father, a distant and struggling man who had never mentioned much about his past. All Noah had ever known was that his mother had left when he and his twin sister, Ella, were just babies. His father's final days were filled with bitterness and guilt, but on his deathbed, he whispered a single name, Willow. It was that name that had led Noah on his search, a search he hadn't even been sure would lead anywhere. The mention of Ella brought a new wave of emotions crashing over Willow. Noah explained that his sister was gravely ill, living in Australia under the care of Layla, a kind woman who had taken them in after their father could no longer care for them. "She's the reason I'm here," Noah admitted, his voice heavy with pain. "I left to try to find help for her. But it's been hard." His words were simple, but the weight behind them was immense. Willow struggled to find her voice. "I didn't know," she whispered, her words barely audible. But even as she spoke, memories began to resurface. Memories of a love she thought was fleeting, of a life she had walked away from in her relentless pursuit of success. She had convinced herself that those choices were necessary, that they were for the best. But now, faced with Noah's presence and the knowledge of Ella's existence, she couldn't hide from the truth anymore. As Noah continued, his pain and resilience became more apparent. He described Ella's condition, how it had worsened over time, how the doctors in Australia had run out of options. "She doesn't have much time," he said, his voice breaking. "And I can't lose her. I won't." His desperation was palpable, and it stirred something deep within Willow. The purpose she had been searching for, the bond she had been missing, it was right here, staring her in the face. Willow knew she couldn't let this revelation pass without action. "We'll bring her here," she said firmly, surprising even herself with the conviction in her voice. Noah looked at her, a mixture of hope and disbelief in his eyes. "You mean that?" he asked, as though afraid to believe it could be true. Willow nodded. "Whatever it takes," she said, her voice steady. "I'll do whatever it takes." But there were challenges ahead. Ella was thousands of miles away, and her condition required careful transportation and immediate medical attention. Layla, who had been her mother in every way that mattered, would need to be contacted and brought into the plan. And then there was the question of Willow's own health. How far could she push herself without jeopardizing her ability to help? The path forward was daunting, but Willow felt an unshakable resolve. As the pieces began to come together, Willow reached out to Layla. Their first conversation was tense but respectful. Layla's love for Ella and Noah was evident, and Willow felt a deep gratitude toward her. "Ella always dreamed of meeting her biological mother," Layla said cautiously. "But you need to understand, her time is running out." Those words struck Willow like a blow, reigniting her determination. She promised Layla that she would do everything in her power to help Ella. Willow began putting plans into motion, using the resources she had once seen as burdens. She reached out to old contacts, arranging for medical transport and securing a place where Ella could receive the care she desperately needed. For the first time in years, Willow felt a sense of purpose that was bigger than herself. Every step she took was for Noah, for Ella, for the family she never knew she had. And yet, as determined as she was, Willow couldn't ignore the fear creeping in. What if it was too late? What if her efforts weren't enough? The doubts were loud, but the hope was louder. She had been given a chance to make things right, and she wasn't going to waste it. Willow had faced many challenges in her life, but none compared to the emotional and physical battle she was about to undertake. The logistics of bringing Ella from Australia to the United States were overwhelming. Willow's old contacts in the corporate world were skeptical about her request for help, but she didn't care. "This isn't business," she told them firmly. "This is life." She spared no expense in arranging specialized medical transport, knowing it was Ella's only chance. When Ella finally arrived, Willow's breath caught in her chest. The girl was pale and frail, her body worn down by years of illness. But her eyes, those unmistakable eyes, sparkled with a strength that defied her condition. Willow felt tears welling up as she realized just how much she had missed. "Ella," she whispered, her voice trembling. Ella smiled weakly. "So, you're my mom," she said, her tone more curious than accusatory. Willow could only nod, overcome by a wave of guilt and love. The doctors moved quickly, conducting tests to determine the best course of action. That's when the unexpected happened. Willow was a match. She could donate the vital organ Ella needed. The news brought a mix of relief and dread. The surgery would be risky for Ella, but it would be life-threatening for Willow, given her already fragile health. The doctors advised against it, warning her of the consequences. "If I don't do this," Willow replied, "then what's the point of anything?" Noah was torn. He had just found his mother and couldn't bear the thought of losing her again. "You've already done so much, Mom," he said, his voice breaking. "You don't have to do this." But Willow saw the fear in his eyes and knew what she had to do. "I left you once," she said softly, holding his hand. "I won't leave you again, not when I can do something to make this right." The day of the surgery arrived, shrouded in a heavy mix of hope and anxiety. Willow spent the morning with Ella and Noah, sharing quiet moments that felt both fleeting and eternal. "You're going to be okay," she told Ella, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Ella smiled, her voice barely above a whisper. "You too." For the first time in years, Willow felt like a mother, a role she was determined to fulfill no matter the cost. As Willow was wheeled into the operating room, she closed her eyes and took a deep breath. She thought of Noah and Ella, of the love she had found in the most unexpected places. She felt no fear, only resolve. "I'll see you soon," she whispered to herself, clutching onto that hope as the anesthesia took hold. Hours passed, and Noah waited anxiously alongside Layla, who had flown in to be by Ella's side. The tension was palpable, every second feeling like an eternity. When the surgeon finally emerged, his expression was calm but tired. "The surgery was a success," he said. "Both Willow and Ella are stable." Relief washed over Noah and Layla like a tidal wave, tears streaming down their faces as they clung to each other in gratitude. Willow's recovery was slow and arduous, but each day brought small victories. Ella, too, began to regain her strength, her pale complexion giving way to a healthier glow. The bond between mother and daughter grew stronger with each shared moment. Willow had always thought of herself as unworthy of love, but now she saw that love didn't need perfection, it needed presence. Noah never left Willow's side. He became her rock, reminding her of the strength she had shown in choosing to fight for Ella. "You saved her, Mom," he said one day, his voice full of emotion. "You saved all of us." Willow smiled weakly, the weight of her sacrifice balanced by the joy of knowing she had given her children a second chance. But the ordeal wasn't over. Willow's body was still fragile, and her health remained a constant battle. Yet, as she watched Ella laugh with Noah and Layla, she knew it had all been worth it. When Willow opened her eyes for the first time after the surgery, the world seemed softer, brighter. The pain was there, sharp and unrelenting, but it was overpowered by the sight of Noah sitting at her bedside. His hand gripped hers tightly, his smile a mixture of relief and exhaustion. "You did it, Mom," he said, his voice trembling with emotion. Those simple words brought tears to her eyes. She had done it, not just for Ella, but for all of them. Ella's recovery was nothing short of miraculous. Though still weak, her cheeks now carried a faint blush of life, and her laughter began to echo through the halls. Willow could barely believe this vibrant young woman was her daughter. Every conversation they shared felt like a piece of the puzzle clicking into place. For Ella, meeting her biological mother was surreal but beautiful. "I always wondered what you were like," she said one day, her voice soft. "Now I know, you're a fighter." The moments they spent together were filled with joy and quiet discovery. Willow learned about Ella's childhood, the stories of how Layla had nurtured her with love and resilience. In turn, Ella listened intently as Willow recounted her own struggles and regrets. It wasn't always easy, there were gaps in their histories that neither could fully bridge, but the love between them grew stronger with every shared word. Noah, too, seemed transformed. For so long, he had carried the weight of the world on his shoulders, fighting to protect his sister and survive on the streets. But now, with Willow and Ella by his side, he allowed himself to breathe. He was no longer just a survivor, he was a brother, a son, and a protector in a family that was slowly finding its way back to wholeness. Watching him care for Ella and Willow filled her heart with pride. Layla, who had been a pillar of strength for Ella and Noah, remained an essential part of their lives. Willow was grateful beyond words for the years of love and care Layla had given them. Despite the complexity of their relationship, the two women found common ground in their shared love for the twins. Layla's presence was a reminder that family wasn't just about biology, it was about the bonds we choose to nurture. As the days turned into weeks, Willow found herself reflecting on everything she had gained. The reward of this journey wasn't just Ella's life, it was the family she had built. For the first time, her wealth and power felt secondary to the simple joys of connection. Sharing a meal, hearing Ella laugh, or watching Noah tease his sister with playful banter. These moments, once foreign to her, were now the most valuable treasures she possessed. Willow also felt a renewed sense of purpose. Her sacrifice had saved Ella, but it had also saved her from the isolation she had built around herself. Each moment of gratitude, each act of love, was a reminder that her life had meaning beyond boardrooms and contracts. She began to dream of what else she could do, not for herself, but for the people she loved and the world they inhabited. Ella, though still recovering, was a beacon of light in Willow's life. "You didn't just save me, you brought us all together," she said one evening, her voice filled with gratitude. Willow couldn't find the words to respond. All she could do was hold her daughter's hand and silently thank the universe for this second chance. Ella's strength inspired Willow to keep fighting, to keep pushing forward despite the challenges that lay ahead. Willow's health remained delicate, but she didn't let it define her. Instead, she embraced each day as a gift, focusing on the life she had found in her children and the family they were rebuilding. The moments of pain were outweighed by the overwhelming joy of watching Ella and Noah thrive. Willow's recovery was a slow and painful process, but every step forward felt like a victory. Each morning, as the sunlight streamed through the window, she found herself grateful for another day. With Ella's health improving and Noah always nearby, Willow began to rebuild, not just her physical strength, but the life she had unknowingly abandoned. Her journey had brought her back to a place she never thought she'd find: home, not in the sense of bricks and walls, but in the sense of family. Ella's laughter became a constant in their lives, her vibrant energy filling the spaces that once felt hollow. Her recovery was a testament to the resilience they all shared, a reminder of how far they had come. Noah, ever the protector, balanced his role as a caregiver with newfound hope. The weight he had carried for so long seemed lighter now, his determination transformed into a sense of purpose. Together, they created a rhythm that felt almost normal, a family finding its footing after years of loss and longing. But the road back wasn't without its struggles. Willow's health remained fragile, a constant reminder of the sacrifice she had made. The doctors warned her to take it easy, but she couldn't help pushing herself. "I'm not done yet," she often told Noah, who would roll his eyes but stay by her side, knowing better than to argue. She refused to let her limitations define her, determined to turn her new lease on life into something meaningful. Layla, too, became an integral part of their journey. Her presence was a grounding force, a bridge between the past and the present. She brought stories of Ella and Noah's childhood, filling in the gaps that Willow had missed. And while their relationship was initially hesitant, the two women found common ground in their love for the twins. Layla's compassion and understanding helped Willow navigate the complexities of their blended family. The world outside their little bubble also began to take notice of Willow's transformation. Former colleagues and acquaintances were surprised to see the once imposing businesswoman now dedicating herself to family and philanthropy. Some admired her change, while others questioned it. Willow didn't care. For the first time, her decisions weren't about proving anything to anyone. She was finally living for something bigger than herself. One day, as she sat with Noah and Ella, an idea began to form. Her wealth, which had once felt like a burden, could now be a tool for change. She envisioned a foundation that would help young people like Noah, those who had been forgotten or overlooked by society. "Aurora," Ella suggested, her eyes lighting up. "It's like a new dawn, for all of us." The name stuck, and the plan began to take shape. The process of creating the foundation was both challenging and invigorating. Willow worked tirelessly, pouring her heart into every detail. Noah and Ella were by her side every step of the way, their input shaping the vision into something truly transformative. "This isn't just for us," Willow told them. "It's for everyone who needs a second chance." The words felt like a promise, a commitment to the life she had fought so hard to reclaim. As the foundation grew, so did their family bond. Willow, Ella, Noah, and even Layla found themselves united in purpose. The days of isolation and regret seemed like a distant memory, replaced by laughter, love, and a shared mission. For Willow, the road back wasn't just about healing. It was about building something lasting, something that would outlive her. But as they stood on the brink of this new chapter, Willow couldn't help but reflect on how far they had come. The sacrifices, the pain, the uncertainty, it had all led to this moment. And while the future was still uncertain, one thing was clear: they had each other. And together, they were unstoppable. Willow's journey was far from over. While she had found purpose and connection, her body remained fragile, her health a constant reminder of the sacrifices she had made. The doctors had warned her about the long-term effects of the surgery, and there were days when the pain felt insurmountable. But she refused to let it define her. Each morning, as she opened her eyes, she reminded herself that every breath was a second chance, a gift she wasn't willing to waste. Noah and Ella were her constant companions in this new phase of life. Noah, with his ever-watchful eyes, ensured she didn't overexert herself, even when her stubbornness got the best of her. "Mom, you're not invincible," he'd say, rolling his eyes as he handed her a glass of water. "Not yet," she'd reply with a wry smile. Their banter brought a lightness to the days, a reminder that even amidst challenges, joy could thrive. Ella's recovery mirrored Willow's own. With each passing week, her energy returned, her laughter echoing through their home. She had taken an active role in the foundation, designing programs to help others in need. "This isn't just about giving back," Ella said one day, her voice filled with conviction. "It's about proving that we can rebuild, no matter how broken we feel." Her words struck a chord with Willow, who saw in Ella the strength she had been searching for her entire life. But resurrection wasn't just about the physical. Willow found herself confronting the emotional scars she had carried for years. The guilt of her past decisions, the relationships she had abandoned, and the years she had spent chasing an illusion of success, they all surfaced in quiet moments of reflection. Yet, instead of pushing them away, she chose to face them. She realized that resurrection wasn't about erasing the past. It was about transforming it into something meaningful. Layla remained a steady presence, her wisdom and kindness guiding Willow through the complexities of their blended family. Their relationship, once marked by hesitation, had blossomed into a genuine friendship. "You've come a long way, Willow," Layla said one evening as they shared a cup of tea. Willow nodded, a soft smile playing on her lips. "I had a good teacher," she replied, her gratitude for Layla's role in Ella and Noah's lives evident in her tone. The foundation, now fully operational, became a reflection of Willow's own transformation. Aurora wasn't just a charity, it was a movement. Young people who had been forgotten by society found hope within its walls, their lives forever changed by the opportunities it provided. Willow poured herself into the work, drawing on her experiences to create something that truly mattered. "This is my legacy," she often said, her voice steady with purpose. Through it all, Willow discovered a resilience she hadn't known she possessed. The pain, both physical and emotional, no longer felt like a burden. It was a testament to her strength. She had faced death, both figuratively and literally, and emerged on the other side as someone entirely new. Her transformation wasn't just for herself, it was for Noah, Ella, and everyone whose lives she touched through Aurora. One evening, as she sat surrounded by her children and Layla, Willow felt an overwhelming sense of peace. The journey that had begun with despair and uncertainty had led her to this moment, a moment filled with love, connection, and hope. She wasn't just surviving anymore, she was living, fully and unapologetically. Willow Bennett had returned to the world, but she was no longer the same woman who had left it behind. The name that once symbolized power and cold ambition now stood for compassion and transformation. With Ella and Noah by her side, and Layla as an unwavering ally, Willow embarked on her most meaningful endeavor yet, creating a legacy that would change lives. The foundation, Aurora, was the embodiment of everything she had learned and sacrificed. It wasn't just a building or an organization, it was hope made tangible. The first young person to walk through the doors of Aurora was a teenager named Liam, whose story mirrored Noah's in many ways. His arrival was a poignant reminder of why Willow had started this journey. She welcomed him with the same warmth she had found in herself during her darkest moments. "You belong here," she told him, her voice steady and kind. Those words were simple but powerful, carrying a weight that made Liam smile for the first time in what felt like years. As Aurora grew, so did its impact. Young people who had once felt invisible found a home within its walls. Programs were created to offer education, housing, and emotional support, all tailored to help them rebuild their lives. Noah, with his unwavering dedication, became a mentor to many of the new arrivals, sharing his story to inspire them. Ella, now fully recovered, brought her creativity to the foundation, designing initiatives that emphasized healing through art and connection. For Willow, each success story was a reminder of her own rebirth. Every time she saw someone take their first steps toward a brighter future, she felt a deep sense of fulfillment. But it wasn't just the young people who were transformed. Willow herself had found a peace that had eluded her for years. The walls she had built around her heart were gone, replaced by an openness that allowed her to truly connect with those around her. Her relationship with Layla deepened as well. The two women, once strangers tied together by circumstance, had become friends and partners in this new chapter. Layla continued to play a vital role in the twins' lives, her wisdom and grace adding a steady foundation to their evolving family dynamic. Together, Willow and Layla worked to ensure that Aurora would endure for generations, a beacon of hope for anyone in need. The media eventually caught wind of Willow's transformation, and while some headlines sensationalized her story, she didn't care. Millionaire finds redemption in the streets, and Willow Bennett's mission to save lost souls might have seemed dramatic, but they brought attention to Aurora and its mission. Willow gave interviews reluctantly, always redirecting the focus to the people whose lives were being changed. "This isn't about me," she'd say. "It's about them." One evening, as the sun set over the city, Willow sat on the porch of her modest new home, surrounded by Noah, Ella, and Layla. The laughter and warmth filling the air felt almost surreal. She looked at Noah, who had grown into a leader with a heart as big as his determination. She watched Ella, whose strength and creativity shone brighter with each passing day. And she glanced at Layla, the woman who had been the bridge between the life Willow left behind and the one she had now built. "I never thought I'd get here," Willow admitted, her voice soft. "I thought I'd lost everything." Layla smiled knowingly. "You didn't lose anything. You just had to find it again." The truth of those words settled in Willow's chest, bringing with them a sense of gratitude that was almost overwhelming. Her journey had been painful, but it had brought her to this moment, to this family, and to this purpose. Aurora wasn't just her legacy, it was her elixir. It was the answer to the question that had haunted her for so long. What was the point? The point was this: love, connection, and the ability to change lives. And as Willow looked at the faces of her family, she knew that she had finally come home, not to a place, but to herself.